Dr. Valterra's crystalline hand shook as she stared at the glowing message on her communication device. The urgent transmission had arrived just hours ago from a remote human research station on Kepler 44 to be a dusty frontier world at the edge of known space. The message was short, but sent chills down her spine. Apex predator captured. Veterinary assistance required immediately. She had been enjoying a peaceful morning in her laboratory on the Crystalline Collective's home world when the alert came. Through, as the galaxy's most respected xenobiologist, Valterra had spent decades studying the dangerous creatures that lurked in the dark corners of space. She had treated venomous shadow serpents from the Andromeda sector, patched up wounded battle-scarred hunters from the ice moons of Proxima, and even helped relocate a family of plasma-breathing dragons that had been terrorizing a mining colony. But this was different. This was about humans. The human species had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago. They were still considered newcomers by most established civilizations. They were strange, unpredictable beings who seemed to approach danger with an almost reckless curiosity, while other species had learned to fear and avoid the galaxy's most deadly predators. Humans had a disturbing habit of trying to study them up close. Valterra quickly packed her medical equipment and boarded her sleek transport ship. The journey to Kepler 4 for 2B would take 6 hours through hyperspace, giving her time to review everything she knew about apex predators. Her database contained files on dozens of species that could earn that terrifying classification. She had a sinking feeling. She knew exactly what the humans had gotten themselves into. The ship's navigation system hummed softly as it calculated the jump coordinates. Through the viewport, she could see the stars stretching into lines of light as they entered hyperspace. The familiar sight usually calmed her nerves, but today it only reminded her of how far she was traveling from the safety of civilized space. As her ship approached the Kepler system, Valterra felt her anxiety building. The planet looked desolate from orbit, its surface covered in rust-colored dust and jagged rock formations. Small human settlements dotted the landscape like tiny beacons of life in an otherwise hostile world. She could see the research station clearly now. Cluster of white buildings surrounded by defensive barriers and communication towers. Her ship touched down on the landing pad with a gentle thud, kicking up clouds of red dust. The air outside was thin but breathable, filled with the metallic scent of iron oxide and the faint smell of something she couldn't identify. As she gathered her equipment, the station's main door slid open with a soft hiss. Dr. Kim Dae-ho stepped out to greet her, and Valterra was immediately struck by his calm demeanor. He was a middle-aged human with kind eyes and graying hair, wearing the standard-issue medical uniform of the Human Frontier Service. His movements were relaxed and confident, not at all what she expected from someone who had supposedly captured one of the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. Dr. Valterra, thank you for coming so quickly, Dae-ho said, extending his hand in the human greeting ritual. I know it was short notice, but we really need your expertise with this one. Valterra shook his hand cautiously, noting how warm human skin felt compared to her own crystalline structure. I came as soon as I received your message. The situation involving an apex predator is not something to take lightly. Dae-ho smiled and gestured toward the station entrance. Of course. Let me show you to the medical bay. Have everything prepared for your arrival. As they walked through the station's corridors, Valterra couldn't help but notice how remarkably calm everyone seemed. Human technicians moved about their duties with casual efficiency, chatting and laughing as if they were dealing with routine maintenance rather than a deadly creature. The walls were lined with monitoring equipment and security cameras, but there was no sense of panic or urgency that she would have expected. Your team seems very relaxed, Valterra observed, adjusting the weight of her medical bag. Are you certain the creature is properly contained? Oh yes, absolutely, Dae-ho replied without hesitation. We've been monitoring him constantly since we brought him in. He's sedated right now, but we're being very careful. They passed through several security checkpoints, each one more sophisticated than the last. Valterra noticed that the humans had installed military-grade containment fields and emergency protocols, suggesting they understood the gravity of the situation even if they didn't show it. What exactly are we dealing with? She asked, her voice barely concealing her growing concern. Deho stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression becoming more serious. "A Vorthok," he said matter-of-factly. "Adult male, approximately 3 meters tall, 6 limbs with retractable claws. He's been causing some trouble in the nearby settlements, and the colonists asked us to help." Veltara's blood turned to ice. The Vorthok were legendary throughout the galaxy, creatures so deadly that even mentioning their name was considered bad luck by some species. They were perfect killing machines, evolved over millions of years to be the ultimate predators. Own people had ancient stories of entire colonies being wiped out by a single Vorthok pack, their crystalline cities reduced to glittering dust in a matter of hours. "A Vorthok," she whispered, her voice cracking with fear. "Are you completely insane?" As they approached the heavy containment doors, Veltara could feel her crystalline body beginning to resonate with an energy she had never experienced before. The corridors seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of them, and with each step, the air grew thicker and more oppressive. The humans had installed multiple layers of security barriers, each one more intimidating than the last. Red warning lights pulsed along the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced across the metal surfaces. Dr. Kim Dae-ho placed his hand on a biometric scanner, and the first door slid open with a mechanical whir. "We've had him contained for about 36 hours now," he explained casually, as if discussing the weather. "The sedatives are wearing off, so he's been a bit restless." Veltara's legs felt like they were made of liquid mercury. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get as far away from this place as possible. But her professional curiosity and sense of duty kept her moving forward. She had never encountered a Vorthok in person, and despite her terror, she knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study the galaxy's most feared predator. Second security door opened, revealing a reinforced observation deck overlooking the main containment area. Through the thick, transparisteel windows, Veltara caught her first glimpse of the creature that had haunted her species. Nightmares for millennia. The Vorthok was even more terrifying than the ancient descriptions suggested. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, its muscular body covered in scales that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its 6 powerful limbs ended in retractable claws that looked like they could slice through starship hull plating. But it was the creature's eyes that truly unnerved her. Intelligent, predatory, and filled with an ancient hunger that spoke of countless generations of perfect killing efficiency. Suddenly, without warning, the Vorthok's head snapped toward their observation window. Its bioluminescent patches flared to life, creating a hypnotic pattern of blue and purple light that pulsed along its neck and shoulders. The creature's massive chest expanded, and then it happened. The growl that emerged from the Vorthok's throat was like nothing Veltara had ever heard. It wasn't just sound, it was a weapon, a primal force that seemed to reach directly into her brain and activate every fear response her species had developed over millions of years of evolution. The subsonic vibrations passed through the reinforced walls as if they were made of paper, striking her crystalline body with the force of a physical blow. Her vision blurred as ancient survival instincts took control. Her body locked up completely, every muscle fiber freezing in place as her natural defense mechanism activated. This was how her people had survived encounters with apex predators. In the distant past, by becoming perfectly still, hoping the danger would pass them by. But there was no hiding from a Vorthok. The creature's enhanced senses could detect the faintest heartbeat, the smallest movement, the slightest change. In body temperature, the growl intensified, and Veltara felt her consciousness beginning to slip away. The sound seemed to penetrate her very soul, dragging up memories of primordial terror that had been buried in her genetic code for eons. She could almost see the shadow of her ancestors, cowering in crystal caves while creatures like this one stalked the night outside. Through her paralyzed state, she became dimly aware of movement beside her. Dr. Park Min-ji, a young human veterinarian with short black hair and kind eyes, was sitting at a monitoring station just a few meters away. She was reviewing data on a tablet, her fingers moving across the screen with casual efficiency. The terrifying roar that had completely incapacitated Veltara seemed to have barely registered with the human. "No, that's just Biko throwing." "Another tantrum," Minji said without looking up from her work. Her voice was calm and slightly amused, as if she were discussing a mildly annoying pet rather than a creature that could tear apart an entire military squadron. He's been like this since we removed the infected spines from his back yesterday. Poor guy is probably still sore from the procedure. Veltara's mind reeled. How was this possible? The human was sitting less than 10 meters away from a fully grown Vorthok, separated only by a barrier that might not even slow the creature down if it decided to break free. Yet she showed no signs of fear, no indication that she even recognized the mortal danger they were all in. Another bone-shaking roar echoed through the facility, and this time Veltara caught sight of the Vorthok's full threat display. Its bioluminescent patches flared brighter, creating a dazzling light show that was designed to disorient prey before the killing strike. The creature's 6 limbs spread wide, revealing rows of smaller spines along its sides that could launch poisonous projectiles with deadly accuracy. Dr. Kim Dae-ho walked over to the intercom system and pressed a button. "Biko, settle down, buddy," he said in a gentle tone. "We know you're uncomfortable, but you need to let that wound heal properly." The Vorthok's growling decreased slightly, and its head tilted toward the speaker with what almost looked like recognition. Veltara watched in absolute bewilderment as the creature's aggressive posture relaxed just a fraction. "You're talking to it?" she managed to whisper through her paralyzed state. "Of course," Dae-ho replied with a smile. "He's highly intelligent. It's because he's dangerous. Doesn't mean he can't understand when we're trying to help him." The casual conversation continued around her while Veltara remained frozen in place, her mind struggling to process what she was witnessing. These humans were treating the galaxy's most feared predator like a difficult patient rather than an existential threat. They moved about their duties with practiced efficiency, monitoring vital signs and discussing treatment options as if they were dealing with any other wounded animal. It took nearly 2 hours for Veltara's crystalline body to fully recover from the paralysis. During that time, the humans continued their work around her with remarkable patience, occasionally checking on her condition, but never making her feel like a burden. Dr. Park Minji had even brought her a special mineral solution that helped restore her energy levels, something that showed an impressive understanding of her species' physiology. When she finally regained full control of her movements, Veltara found herself in the station's main briefing room, surrounded by holographic displays and data screens. Dr. Lee Soo-jin, the station's behavioral specialist, was a petite woman with sharp eyes and an easy smile. She had been waiting patiently for Veltara to recover so she could share the real story behind their unusual patient. "I know this must be overwhelming," Soo-jin said gently, gesturing to a comfortable chair. "Most species have a very different relationship with apex predators than we do. But I think once you see what we've discovered, you'll understand why we're not afraid of Biko." The lights dimmed, and a large holographic screen flickered to life, showing security footage from various locations around the colony. The timestamp indicated the recordings were from 3 years ago, and Veltara could see the devastating aftermath of what appeared to be a massive storm system. "This is footage from the plasma storm that hit the outer settlements," Soo-jin explained. "These storms are rare but incredibly destructive. They can level entire cities and create electromagnetic pulses that disable most technology for weeks." The images showed twisted metal structures and scorched earth where thriving communities had once stood. In one particularly haunting clip, Veltara could see the remains of what looked like a Vorthok hunting ground, with massive claw marks carved into the rocky terrain and the scattered remains of the pack's territorial markers. "The colonists were conducting search and rescue operations when they found him," Soo-jin continued, switching to a different recording. "Just a larva, barely the size of a human child, buried under the debris of his family's den." The new footage showed a group of human rescue workers carefully excavating what looked like a collapsed cave system. Their movements were cautious but determined, and Veltara could see the concern on their faces as they worked to free whatever was trapped beneath the rubble. Then she saw him for the first time as a youngster. The tiny Vorthok larva was nothing like the terrifying creature she had encountered in the containment area. His scales were dull and patchy, his bioluminescent patches barely functional. He was wounded, scared, and clearly near death. But what struck Veltara most was the gentleness with which the humans handled him. The colonists could have left him. There, Sujin said softly. Most species would have. But the Chen family decided to take him in. They had lost their own home in the storm, but they still made room for an orphan predator. The footage shifted to show the interior of a temporary shelter, where a human family was carefully nursing the young Vorthok back to health. A middle-aged woman was feeding him with a bottle, while two children watched with fascination rather than fear. The larva's eyes were closed, but his small claws gripped the woman's arm with surprising gentleness. Mrs. Chen named him Biko, Sujin continued. It means white tiger in Korean. She said he reminded her of the legendary creatures from Earth's ancient stories, powerful and dangerous but noble in their own way. Veltara watched in amazement as the recordings showed Biko's growth over the following months. The humans had created a special enclosure for him, complete with climbing structures and toys that would help develop his natural instincts. But more importantly, they treated him like a member of their family. The children played with him daily, teaching him games and showing him affection that seemed impossible between such different species. Here's something that will really surprise you, Sujin said, switching to a new set of recordings. These are from just 6 months ago. The screen now showed a fully grown Biko, his massive form moving with fluid grace around the colony's farmyard. But instead of the predatory stalking Veltara expected, she saw something that defied everything she thought she knew about Vorthok behavior. Biko was playing with a group of human children, his enormous claws carefully retracted. As he chased them in what was clearly a game of tag, the children showed no fear, laughing and shrieking with delight as the 3-meter-tall predator pretended to be slow and clumsy to give them a better chance of escape. When one of the smaller children tripped and fell, Biko immediately stopped and gently helped her to her feet with one massive claw. This is impossible, Veltara whispered. Vorthok don't play. They don't show restraint. They're programmed to kill. Watch this, Sujin said, switching to another recording. The new footage showed Biko standing guard over the colony's livestock during the night. His posture was alert and protective, and Veltara could see his bioluminescent patches glowing softly in the darkness. Suddenly, a pack of native predators emerged from the shadows, their eyes fixed on the defenseless animals. What happened next was a masterpiece of controlled violence. Biko moved with lightning speed, intercepting the attackers with surgical precision. His claws flashed in the dim light, and within seconds, 2 of the predators were down while the others fled in terror. But what amazed Veltara was that he didn't pursue them. Instead, he returned to his position and resumed his vigil, ensuring the livestock remained safe. He's protecting them, she said in disbelief. He's protecting his family, Sujin corrected. That's what the colonists are to him. The livestock, the children, the entire settlement, they're all part of his pack now. The final set of recordings showed the recent events that had led to Biko's current situation. The footage revealed a very different story than the terrorizing incidents that had been reported. Biko had become separated from his human family during a routine hunting expedition and had spent days searching for them. Increasingly, desperate behavior had been misinterpreted as aggression by other settlements who didn't know his true nature. The reunion footage was perhaps the most touching of all. When the search teams finally located Biko, the massive Vorthok's reaction was pure joy. He nuzzled against his human companions like an oversized pet, his bioluminescent patches flashing in patterns that Sujin explained were expressions of happiness and relief. How is this possible? Veltara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The Vorthok are killing machines. They're not supposed to be capable of love. Dr. Kim Daeho, who had been quietly observing from the corner, stepped forward with that same calm smile she was beginning to recognize as uniquely human. Every creature is capable of love, he said simply. You just have to know how to show it to them. The next morning brought a new challenge that would test everything Veltara thought she knew about medicine and courage. Dr. Choi Hoanwoo, station's chief surgeon, had arrived early to prepare for what he called the most interesting operation of his career. He was a tall, lean man with steady hands and the kind of calm confidence that came from years of working in dangerous frontier conditions. The infection is spreading faster than we hoped, he explained to Veltara as they reviewed the medical scans. Those wound channels along his back are filled with debris from the storm, and some kind of bacterial infection has taken hold. If we don't act soon, it could become life-threatening. Veltara studied the holographic display showing Biko's internal structure. The infected areas glowed red on the scan, spreading like poisonous rivers through the creature's powerful back muscles. What made the situation even more dangerous was that Vorthok anatomy was incredibly complex. Their six-limb structure meant that their nerve clusters and major blood vessels were arranged in ways that differed dramatically from most other species. "This is going to require precision that borders on the impossible," she said, her voice filled with concern. "One wrong move and we could paralyze him permanently, or worse." Dr. Choi smiled and began laying out his surgical instruments with practiced efficiency. "That's why we asked for your help. Your people's crystalline vision can see cellular structures that our equipment can't detect. We'll need that advantage to navigate around his vital systems." As they prepared the surgical bay, Veltara found herself working alongside the human medical team in ways she had never experienced before. Her own people approached medicine with cold, clinical precision, relying on advanced technology and sterile procedures that eliminated any emotional connection to their patients. But the humans were different. They combined their tools with something far more powerful: genuine care and emotional understanding. Dr. Park So-young, the station's anesthesiologist, was carefully monitoring Biko's vital signs as the sedatives took effect. She spoke to him in soft, soothing tones throughout the process, her hand gently resting on his massive head. "It's okay, big guy," she whispered. "We're going to take care of you. Your family's waiting for you to get better." The most remarkable thing was that Biko seemed to respond to her voice. His bioluminescent patches pulsed in slow, rhythmic patterns that the humans had learned to recognize as contentment. Even in his sedated state, he was comforted by the familiar sounds of his adopted family. "How do you know he can understand you?" Veltara asked, as they began the delicate process of opening the infected wound channels. "We don't know for certain," Dr. Choi admitted, his hands moving with surgical precision. "But we've noticed that he responds differently to different voices and tones. Fear makes him agitated, but calm, confidence seems to relax him. So we choose to believe that our words matter." As the surgery progressed, Veltara found herself drawn into the rhythm of the work. Her crystalline vision allowed her to see the microscopic details of Biko's internal structure, guiding the human surgeons around clusters of nerve endings and vital organs that would have been invisible to their instruments. But more than that, she began to understand the emotional connection that drove their medical practice. "There's a piece of metal lodged near his spinal column," she reported, her voice steady despite the complexity of the procedure. "It's putting pressure on the nerve cluster that controls his rear limbs." Dr. Choi nodded and adjusted his approach, his movements careful and deliberate. "Hold still, big guy," he murmured to the sedated Vorthok. "We're almost done with this part." The operation took nearly 6 hours, with the team working in careful coordination to remove debris, clean infected tissue, and repair the damage that had been causing Biko so much pain. Throughout the procedure, the humans maintained a steady stream of gentle conversation, both with each other and with their patient. Veltara was amazed by their approach. Her people would have completed the surgery in half the time using automated systems and nanosurgery techniques, but they would have treated the patient as nothing more than a complex biological machine. The humans understood something her species had never grasped, that healing required more than just technical skill. "I'm seeing something interesting in his neural patterns," Dr. Park So-young reported from her monitoring station. "Even under anesthesia, his brain activity spikes whenever we talk to him. It's like he's trying to stay connected to us." As they worked deeper into the wound channels, Veltara began to see the true extent of Biko's suffering. The infection had spread further than they had realized, creating pockets of poison that were slowly eating away at his strength. What struck her most was the evidence of his restraint. Despite being in constant pain, he had never lashed out at the humans, who were trying to help him. "This level of self-control is unprecedented," she told Dr. Choi as they carefully extracted another piece of debris. "Most creatures would have become completely feral under this kind of stress, but he's been fighting to stay gentle for his family." The final phase of the surgery was the most delicate. They had to create new drainage channels to allow the remaining infection to clear, while being careful not to damage the complex network of muscles that gave Biko his incredible strength and agility. Veltara's crystalline vision was crucial here, allowing her to map the safest path through his anatomy. When Biko began to wake from the anesthesia several hours later, Veltara was surprised by her own reaction. Instead of the primal terror she had experienced before, she felt something closer to parental concern. His first response was a low, questioning growl that she now recognized not as a threat, but as confusion and vulnerability. "It's okay," Dr. Park Soyoung whispered, gently stroking the creature's massive head. "You're safe now. The pain is going to get better." Biko's bioluminescent patches flickered in slow, peaceful patterns that Veltara had learned to interpret as contentment. His enormous eyes opened slowly, focusing first on the humans around him with unmistakable recognition and trust. When his gaze fell on Veltara, there was no aggression, only curiosity about the new member of his medical team. "He's not a monster," she whispered, reaching out tentatively to touch his scaled hide. "He's just a lost child who found the perfect family." 3 days after the surgery, Veltara stood in the station's main landing bay, watching something that would change her understanding of the universe forever. The morning sun cast long shadows across the metal floor as a small transport ship touched down, kicking up clouds of red dust from the planet's surface. She had been documenting every detail of Biko's recovery, but nothing had prepared her for what she was about to witness. The transport's doors slid open with a soft hiss, and out stepped the Chen family. Mrs. Chen was a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and work-worn hands, followed by her husband and their 2 children. The moment they saw Biko waiting in the specially reinforced section of the landing bay, their faces lit up with pure joy. Biko's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The massive Vorthok, who had been resting quietly just moments before, suddenly came alive with an energy that made his bioluminescent patches flare like a constellation of stars. But instead of the aggressive display Veltara had witnessed days earlier, this was something entirely different. His patches pulsed in rapid, joyful patterns that seemed to dance across his scaled hide. "Ko," called out Jihoon, the family's 12-year-old son, breaking into a run across the landing bay. The creature's response defied everything Veltara thought she knew about apex predators. Beko bounded toward his human family with obvious excitement, but his movements were incredibly controlled despite his size and enthusiasm. Each step was calculated to avoid accidentally harming the fragile beings he loved so much. His massive claws remained carefully retracted, his powerful tail swished with restrained joy. The youngest member of the family, a girl named Sumin, who couldn't have been more than 10 years old, showed absolutely no fear as she threw her arms around Biko's enormous neck. The sight of this tiny human child embracing the galaxy's most feared predator was so surreal that Veltara had to blink several times to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. "You were worried about us, weren't you?" Sumin said, scratching behind Biko's audio receptors in a spot that made him purr with contentment. "Silly Biko, we told you we'd find you. We would never leave you behind." Biko's response was a low, rumbling sound that Veltara now recognized as his version of happiness. It was the same basic vocalization that had paralyzed her with terror just days earlier. But now she could hear the subtle differences in tone and pitch that conveyed completely different emotions. This wasn't a threat display, it was pure, unconditional love. Mrs. Chen approached more slowly, her eyes carefully examining the healing surgical sites on Biko's back. "How is he feeling?" she asked Dr. Kim Daeho, who had joined them in the landing bay. "Much better," Daeho replied. With a smile, Dr. Veltara's expertise was crucial in removing all the infected debris. He should make a full recovery within a few weeks. Veltara watched as the family conducted their own examination of Bichio's condition. He knew his body language and behaviors better than any xenobiologist could hope to learn in years of study. When Mr. Chen gently pressed against certain areas of the creature's back, Go's reaction told them everything they needed to know about his pain levels and healing progress. "The scarring will be permanent," Mrs. Chen said softly, running her fingers along the surgical sites. "But that's okay. We all have scars from the storm. As the reunion continued, Veltara found herself documenting not just the medical recovery, but something far more profound. She was witnessing the bond between species that should have been natural enemies. The humans showed no fear, no hesitation, no sense that they were dealing with anything more dangerous than a beloved pet. And Biko, despite being a creature evolved to kill, showed nothing but gentle affection for his adopted family. This is going to revolutionize everything we know about interspecies relationships. She whispered to herself, her recording device capturing every moment of the reunion. Dr. Park So-young approached with a smile. It's beautiful, isn't it? This is why we do what we do. Not just to heal injuries, but to preserve families. Within an hour, the entire dynamic of the landing bay had changed. Biko was now lying peacefully in a patch of sunlight, his massive form serving as a living playground for the Chen children.
Ow.
Sumin was using his broad back as a slide, while Ji-hoon practiced his acrobatic skills by leaping from one of Biko's arms to another. The creature's careful control was remarkable. He adjusted his position constantly to ensure the children's safety, while still allowing them to play. Veltara asked Mrs. Chen, who was preparing supplies for the journey home. It's the same way you trust any family member, Mrs. Chen replied. Love isn't about logic or analysis. It's about knowing someone's heart. And Biko has the gentlest heart I've ever known. As the family prepared to depart, Dr. Kim Dae-ho approached Veltara with a serious expression. What will you tell the Crystalline Collective? He asked. Veltara looked back at Beko, who was now saying goodbye to the medical staff with gentle nuzzles and content purring sounds. The same creature that had terrified her into complete paralysis was now allowing human children to braid decorative ribbons into his head spines. We have much to learn from your species, she replied, her voice filled with wonder. You possess something we've never encountered before in all our travels across the galaxy. You have the ability to find family in the most unlikely places, to see potential where others see only danger. As the Chen family's transport lifted off with Beak, who safely aboard Veltara began composing her report. She knew that her findings would send shockwaves through the galactic scientific community. The implications were staggering. If humans could form genuine bonds with creatures like the Vorthok, what other impossible relationships might be possible? Her transport ship's engines hummed to life as she prepared for the journey back to her home world. Through the viewport, she could see the Chen family's ship disappearing into the distance, carrying with it proof that love could triumph over millions of years of evolutionary programming. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. They weren't just another species struggling to survive in a hostile universe. They were something new, something unprecedented. They were the bridge builders, the family makers, the ones who could turn monsters into beloved companions through nothing more than patience, kindness, and unconditional love. As her ship entered hyperspace, Veltara realized that the humans didn't conquer through fear or superior technology like so many other species. They conquered through empathy, one heart at a time. And perhaps that was the most powerful force in the universe, the END.